Hi folks, Alex Manier out here again with Common Sense Firearms Training in Las Vegas, Nevada. The purpose of this video that we're going to talk about now is we're going to talk about handling the recoil when it comes to dealing with an AR platform or carbine. There's a few different holds out there. There's actually a lot of different holds when it comes to different purposes. And a lot of times you'll see that just the intended shot that you're going for can actually dictate what stance you're probably going to want to be in. With stance itself though, one of the things we tend to get into when it comes to a stable platform and we talk about our stance, you know, usually it's one of those things where you've been standing your whole life, so I can't really tell you how to stand better than you can already do it. But what we do need to really focus on is make sure that we've got a little bit of a wider platform than most people tend to have, and that we've also got our weight distributed forward. Okay, remember that firearms don't kick, okay, and they don't jump around or anything. They literally just kind of push back. Well, all we have to do is if we think about that pushing motion, if you're just going to lean forward into it, then when it pushes you, it doesn't do anything. But if you're kind of erect, weight back, when it pushes you back, your weight's already that direction, so it's just going to continue on with that motion. So all we do is we just apply a little bit of a forward weight to it, and the easiest way to check that out is honestly if your feet are about shoulder width apart and you've got your weight distributed on the balls of your feet, then when at a given time when you're shooting, you should basically be able to jump a little bit. That's all you got to do. As long as you can put a little bit of a bounce into there, then your weight's in the right place. Now, if you have to rock forward and then bounce, then your weight wasn't forward and it wasn't in the right place. Pretty simple trick for you. Okay, but we're going to talk about the hold itself when it comes to the rifle, okay? So what we tend to see a lot of times is a lot of people like to actually kind of side saddle themselves a little bit, and they're kind of off to the side of the firearm. Okay, well, the old logic of putting your nose to the charging handle, that's still kind of true when we're talking about those really precision shots. And when you go to zero, you're still going to want to do that kind of stuff because those are the things that really kind of, drive home all the fundamentals and that there's no change in your sight picture or anything like that. But now once we start talking about manipulating the gun a little bit and actually having a little bit of recoil management, this is not necessarily the best hold anymore, because what ends up happening is if you think about the physics of how this firearm will fire, the bolt carrier group is going to come flowing back into this buttstock, and then it's going to slam and hit the final end. Well, if all I've got stopping that is a little bit of shoulder right here, then you're going to end up with a flip. It's going to kick. Okay, well, we don't want it to kick. We just want it to push. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm actually going to rotate all the way around and get completely behind the rifle. Okay, and then we're going to have, when it comes to the hand grip here, if you think about it like a pistol and you get a good high 10 grip, that same mentality actually still applies. So good high grip is all you got to think about here, okay? But what we want to try and do is we don't necessarily want it on our shoulder anymore. We actually want it into what's called the pocket, okay? And if you think about where your shoulder rotates, where the rotation stops is where the pocket is. Because as you're rotating around, you can manipulate the firearm here back at the muzzle. And you see that translates. But if we get into the chest, then as I do that, it really mitigates the amount of movement on the firearm. So it's not necessarily on the chest, but it's not necessarily on the shoulder. It's in between, right where that meat is. And that's where we're going to talk about the pocket. Then what we're going to do is we're going to literally rotate that shoulder into the firearm, okay, and kind of envelop it. You see it's literally getting tucked into the crease here. Okay, now for those of you running body armor, that's a different course. And there are ways to kind of help mitigate that, but the same principles actually still apply. So, but for today's purpose, we're just talking about the regular fundamentals here without the body armor on. So as we rotate in, what we're going to do next is we're going to lean forward into it, okay? And you'll notice that I'm able to just look right down the sight here, and then if I just peek my head up a little bit, this is basically where if we were shooting a pistol, my head would be up here. Whereas if I'm shooting a rifle, I'm going to drop my head down and put that cheek right along the cheek well so that I can start looking through the sights, okay? So when we talk about our sight of alignment, what the easiest thing to think about is once you get that good stance and you're looking through your sights, just think about to yourself where it is on your cheek, and that's going to be the same spot every single time, okay? So what this does, though, is it actually produces a good backdrop for the recoil management of this firearm. As the bolt carrier group comes back into that buttstock area and it slams into something, now it's slamming into a whole bunch of body mass, and if you look by having your forward momentum and forward lean, the recoil literally transfers down your spine into your feet and disperses throughout the ground. Okay, and that's what we're kind of going for, so we're giving it a place to flow through nice and even, okay? So that's a decent position for the buttstock back here. In fact, if you actually do this one-handed, you can still get pretty good recoil management right here, just like this. The support hand can play a very important role in this as well. Now there's two really prominent holds out there. When you're talking about a carbine, we tend to not go into this particular, the magwell pull-in thing here. That's more of a subcompact machine gun kind of thing. It was really designed for the MP5, and this is not an MP5. This has got a totally different way of handling a totally different round, longer barrel, so there's just too many factors that change. So this, not necessarily the hold we tend to endorse, but what we can do is if we think about that same process and just move your hand forward just a little bit to create a little bit more of that recoil management up here and decrease a little bit of the pivot point that might happen, then you'll end up with a better result. So simply by pushing forward, and that's one of the reasons that I actually have my kit set up the way I do, is that's where my hand rests anyway, so that way my flashlight and everything else is just right here where the hand is going to be anyway. Okay, and the nice part about this is that I've got pretty good recoil management. I can see everything around me by simply moving my head, and then I can come right back down on target, okay? And it gives me a really good field of view. I can use my peripherals, all sorts of wonderful situational awareness. All right, now there's another hold out there that's a little bit, I'm gonna kind of adjust a little bit more here, but what they'll do is they'll actually straighten out their support hand, come over top and literally put the thumb almost across, literally pretty much atop the cross of the firearm. And this is kind of the same concept when we talk about pistols and you have that wrist locked out. Same concept, okay? Because we showed you in our pistol video how you can literally handle a good portion of recoil on the pistol with just your support hand. Well, same concept here, okay? So they've got really good recoil management. Now the downsides to this is just the fact that if something's happening on my right side, I'm okay with it. If something's happening on my left side, it's not only hard to see because there's a big arm in the way, but I can't even really move my head over there to see it. So I have to kind of tweak it around and drop the arm just to get a good view. And so I'm more of a concept of if I'm going to, from my situational awareness standpoint, if I have to look right or left, if I'm going to have to drop the elbow anyway, then my particular taste is have the elbow down in the first place. So this is where we start getting into some of those nitpicky stuff. And honestly, it's whichever one works best for you and can justify itself in your mind. Because some people, it's more justifiable to have the better recoil management, and some people it's more justifiable to have the better situational awareness. That's just going to be shooter specific, okay? So with all these concepts in mind though, what we're going to do here is we're just going to show you a little bit of shooting, live fire, and I'm going to show you a couple of the different concepts we just talked about, and you'll see how it actually recoils and how we can handle it through the different holds. Okay, so we're going to do live fire now. I actually switched out to a standard. This is a stock M400. This is a 6-hour version, okay? But we haven't done anything to muzzle brakes or buffer springs or anything like that. This is how the gun comes. We wanted to do that so that we can kind of show the holds being the effect, not necessarily all the gear tweaking, okay? So when we talk about that sideways hold, and you're kind of off to the side, this is a little bit more precise because you can put your nose on the reference point on the charging handle. You can make sure that you're in the same spot, okay? But watch the recoil management here. Okay? And it's easy to see it's going up and right. Okay, again, there's no mass back here, so it just pushes you. And the twisting motion is basically because that's how your body moves at that point. The only thing left to move is your hips, so it twists. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of get over behind it. We're going to move that buttstock into that sweet spot. Remember we talked about the rotation here? Okay, so it's right into that sweet spot. Okay, and what we're going to do now, I'm going to actually take my left hand out of the equation. It's not going to hold it at all. Okay, and I'm just going to pull in to that sweet spot and lean forward, arch the back into it. Okay, so that one motion has changed a lot of the recoil. So now what we can do is we're going to change it up a little bit more. And I'm going to do the competition style version a little bit first. Okay, so you see the thumb's literally going all the way over top. Okay, I'm locking out the wrist, locking out the arm. It's in the sweet spot. Okay. So when we talk about all that, you end up with a good recoil management. Okay. So that recoil management is fantastic, but again, with our arm up here, we can't necessarily see what's going on, and in order to see, we have to drop the elbow. Your head can't even twist correctly. So what we're going to do is I like to find kind of that happy median. So the thumb is still up above the bore line obviously being right here where the barrel is, okay? So the thumb's still up above that. What I'm doing is I'm dropping the elbows down out of the way and just back off the wrist a little bit, okay? And you still get a pretty decent recoil management. I would say it's probably not as much recoil management as you get when you get your full-on competition style, when you lock out all the moving pieces. But the the give and take here, the take is the fact that I can actually see all my left side. I can drop my head, look over that direction, look around this way. So it's going to be something that's very much shooter preference. And the thing that you really got to remember though is as we do this, you have to make sure that whichever one you're going to choose, make sure it justifies itself in your mind for your purpose, and make sure you're comfortable with it. That way you can go further from it, because the idea of becoming a good competitive shooter or a good professional shooter or anything like that is you're getting to the point where shooting becomes second nature, which frees up your mind to do whatever the situation is that is going to require of you. Okay, so now what we're going to show you though is that same recoil management with those other holds. This time you're going to see it from the angle of the support hand, okay? So when we talk about that support hand, we talk about that competition style, you're locking your wrist out, you're locking the elbow out, you're locking the thumb down, you're locking everything out, okay? The recoil management is fantastic, but again, you can see that I can only really see a little bit. Okay, if I didn't have a microphone on, you wouldn't hear anything right now because it'd be muffled in the arm. So in order to see, I have to kind of drop this hand out of the way. So I try to find that happy medium for me. The thumb is still going to be up above the bore line, okay? Thumb's still up here. I'm not holding onto this like a pistol grip. I'm holding onto it as a reference point, okay? So thumb's still out. I'm still locking that wrist forward, but the elbow is dropping down. Okay? So with the recoil management on this one, there's a little bit of a noticeable difference. Since you have a little bit more moving parts, the gun will move a little bit more. But again, it's one of those give and takes. You know, the take again, I can see on my left side, it increases my visual ability, and it gives me the ability to start game planning out what I'm going to need to do for the situation that I'm in. So to kind of recap on that, what I want you to do, guys, just go out, practice, okay? Try both those techniques, find out which one works a little bit best for you, and you know, again, it's going to be shooter specific, so what works best for you might not necessarily work best for me, but it needs to be something that justifies itself in your mind. So with that in mind, thanks for watching. This is Alex with Common Sense Firearms Training. Get out, get educated, stay safe.